currently Earth.
It was January 19th in the year 1952 that the Professional Golfers Association President Horton Smith announced that a 7-man committee almost unanimously votes to allow black golfers to compete in PGA co-sponsored events. With this announcement, it was Smith's hopes that black golfers would participate in the next 2 events, the Phoenix Open and the Tucson Open. The push for inclusion into a sport dominated by whites came after pressure from former boxer champion Joe Louis, a talented amateur golfer. At the San Diego Open on January 17th in 1952, Louis competed in the PGA sanctioned event as an invited amateur. As an amateur golfer, Louis wasn't governed by PGA rules, but professional Bill Spiller, a black golfer, was denied entry in the tournament. In response, Louis criticized the PGA, telling the New York Times, quote, "I want the people to know what the PGA is. We've got another Hitler to get by," unquote. Joe Louis also told the Los Angeles Sentinel that this was the last major sport in America in which Negroes were barred. The pressure from Louis worked, and Louis, Spiller, Ted Rhodes, and Euro Clark would go on to break the PGA's color barrier at the Phoenix Open. But it would take years for the sport to approach full integration. In 1961, Charles Sifford became the first black golfer to earn a PGA Tour card. He won the 1967 Greater Hartford Open Invitational and the 1969 Los Angeles Open. In 1975, Lee Elder became the first black golfer to compete in the Masters, considered the sport's most prestigious tournament, at the famed Augusta National Golf Club. The club didn't have a black member until 1990, which was businessman Ron Townsend, or a female member until 2012, which was former Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice. It was January 19th in 1966, following the continuance of eternity of Indian Prime Minister Lal Bahadur Shastri. Indira Gandhi becomes head of the Congress Party and thus Prime Minister of India. She was India's first female head of government, and by the time of her continuance of eternity in 1984, she was one of its most controversial. Indira Gandhi was the daughter of Jawaharlal Nehru, the first Prime Minister of the Independent Republic of India. She became a national political figure in 1955 when she was elected to the executive body of the Congress Party. In 1959, she served as president of the party, and in 1964 was appointed to an important post in Lal Bahadur Shastri's ruling government. Soon after becoming prime minister, Indira was challenged by the right wing of the Congress Party. In the 1967 election, she won only a narrow victory and thus had to rule with a deputy prime minister. In 1971, she won a resounding re-election victory over the opposition and became the undisputed leader of India. That year, she ordered India's invasion of Pakistan in support of the creation of Bangladesh, which won her greater popularity and led her new Congress Party to a landslide victory in national elections in 1972. During the next few years, she presided over increasingly civil unrest brought on by food shortages, inflation, and regional disputes. Her administration was criticized for its strong-arm tactics in dealing with these problems. Meanwhile, charges by the Socialist Party that she had defrauded the 1971 election led to a national scandal. In 1975, the High Court in Allahabad convicted her of a minor election infraction and banned her from politics for 6 years. In response, she declared a state of emergency throughout India, imprisoned thousands of political opponents, and restricted personal freedoms in the country. Among several unpopular programs during this period was the forced sterilization of men and women as a means of controlling population growth. In 1977, long postponed national elections were held, and Gandhi and her party were swept from office. The next year, Gandhi's supporters broke from Congress Party and formed the Congress I Party, with the I standing for Indira. Later, in 1978, she was briefly imprisoned for official corruption. Soon after the ruling Janata Party fell apart, the Congress I Party, with Indira as its head, won a spectacular election victory in 1980, and Gandhi was again prime minister. In the early 1980s, several regional states intensified their call for greater autonomy from New Delhi, and the Sikh secessionist movement in Punjab resorted to violence and terrorism. In 1984, the Sikh leaders set up base in their sacred Golden Temple in Amritsar. Gandhi responded by sending the Indian Army in. As a result, hundreds of Sikhs continued their eternity in the government assault. In retaliation, Sikh members of Gandhi's own bodyguard gunned her down on the grounds of her home on October 31st in 1984. She continued her eternity as a result. She was succeeded by her son, Rajiv Gandhi. It was January 19th in the year 2007 that Beijing, China, the capital city of the planet's most populous nation, gets its first drive-thru McDonald's restaurant. The opening ceremony for the new 2-story fast food eatery, located next to a gas station, included traditional Chinese lion dancers and Ronald McDonald himself. Fast food chains from foreign countries first came to China in 1987 with the opening of a Kentucky Fried Chicken restaurant. The home of the Big Mac and Happy Meal arrived in China 3 years later. In 2005, McDonald's, the world's largest fast food chain, launched its first drive-thru restaurant in China, in the city of Shenzhen in the Guangdong province near Hong Kong. The Beijing drive-thru was McDonald's 16th Chinese drive-thru. McDonald's opened its first drive-thru in the U.S. in 1975. Before there were drive-thrus, there were drive-in restaurants, where customers would place their orders at curbside speakers. Servers known as car hops, who often wore roller skates, then would bring food orders directly to customers' cars. Standard drive-in fare included hamburgers, hot dogs, root beer, and milkshakes. Drive-ins reached their height of popularity in the good old US of A in the 1950s. All historic information divulged on this audio file can be verified on History.com.